Hey everybody, what's up? We're back. Another episode of Tell Me You're Joking. I'm really excited for today's episode because this is has become a friend here in the last few years. Even though we've got similar roots, East Side roots, 62040er. Another Granite City native that's sprouted beyond the railroad tracks and has done much with her life in a lot of different markets. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the journey and what's going on today and probably a few other things impromptu. So joining me today is Miss Mitch Meyers. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm actually awesome. It's rare that I say that because normally, 3 kids, jobs.
That's a lot.
The world,
That's right.
news cycles, kind of drags you down a little bit.
It does. Especially with kids, you worry.
Yeah, it is a different world. Mine are relatively young, 20, 16, and 11, but starting to taste a little bit of the what if.
Yeah, you're starting to get some traction there with those ages.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming in and joining me. I'll be honest, as I mentioned just a second ago, known you for a while. I know your resume. I know your background. Was lucky enough to record and produce the episode between you and Josh Allen over on Baked In. Go check that out if you haven't heard it yet. Baked In podcast, Josh Allen. In which he was really kind of getting into a little bit of the same stuff that I would like to talk about today, background transition in between these industries. But one of the reasons I reached out was, truth be told, is paying attention to LinkedIn because we're connected on LinkedIn. And I was just, I always find it interesting to see who's engaging, who's commenting, because we've all seen the same numbers, right? Of 100% of people that have social media accounts, you have 1% that creates content, about 9% that engages with it, and 90% that scrolls. Yeah, kind of crazy numbers when you think about it.
It's really interesting.
And you tend to be, I would say that you're probably in that 4, 5, 6% range. Every now and then it'd be a thumbs up or insightful, some short commentary. But I was noticing what you were leaning into, especially recently after here in St. Louis with the tornado that came through. And so I kind of want to start there, maybe a little bit at the finish line, and then we'll go back and talk some things that I want to focus on. Your own engagement with social media, I won't say LinkedIn in particular. How do you use it? Because you've been in the game a while, and this is a relatively new tool, 15 years old, but it continues to evolve. How do you use or utilize social media for your own purposes?
So I, honestly, I'm not an original content creator, and I never thought about it. I hadn't really had the time, but as I've connected to more people and see interesting things that they write or understand their perspectives on things, sometimes I feel compelled to comment. And, it's interesting you say that because I'm actually moving in a couple of months, and our new neighbors said, "We like your political views." And I'm like, I just stared at them, and he goes, "We follow you online."
Yeah.
So I'm not one that's creating, but sometimes there's some really good content that I believe in, and I'll make a comment because I know that people who do follow me are going to see that comment.
So I want to jump on top of exactly what they said because I was thinking the same thing, but I wasn't really sure because, a lot of people, the whole taboo factor. Mm-hmm. But you do tend to engage with things in which you either advocate for the post or maybe express frustration, which clearly indicates a lean,
right.
To the left, to be honest. Do you think about that at all? Because again, you grew up in a time frame, we all did, in which religion and politics and all these things within your social circles
was taboo.
Yeah, totally taboo.
Yeah.
Well, now politics is almost, it's prime time.
Right.
Do you think about it when you engage those, or do
You know, I
do you want to
guess-
send a message or no?
I mean, I'm not overly aggressive about it, and I'm also concerned about who wrote the post and, you know, where the information came from, because there's so much fake stuff out there now. But if I know who the person is, or I know that the data source is good and it gets under my skin, that's just who I am. I have a point of view, and you're going to hear it. And I don't expound, you know, I don't write the really long, thoughtful things. I sort of just let people know my opinion, because things aren't all right now. You know, I'm concerned. And so when I can just speak up and lend my voice about the things that I think are really outside the bounds, I'm going to do it.
So when you say things aren't all right now, I tend to agree. I tend to be a little bit more in the weeds. You know, it's the poli-sci guy in me. I think there's layers of what's not all right now.
Right.
Can you take a second to maybe like, what's this cake look like in your world that you're really looking at, that you're like, that's bad, we need to address this, or, you know, because a lot of it is noise, intentional. But what jumps out at you where, you know, maybe just turns that screw a little tighter?
You know, what concerns me is I have 2 adult children, and I'm hoping I'm going to have grandchildren. And I'm just very concerned about what's happening to our country right now in terms of, you know, what people believe in. You know, are facts really facts? And it almost seems like who's saying it says it's fact when it truthfully isn't. And it has completely divided the country. And, you know, friends of mine who we always have been on the same political sides, it's hard to be with them, you know, because some of the things that they bring up and argue, I just can't believe that they believe it. And it hurts my feelings, and I don't want family and friends to believe in something that I think is false.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the anger that the whole country is living under right now is so unhealthy. I have been trying to just do things in my local community and try to pull out of the national conversation as much as I can. But with kids and hopefully grandkids, you can't do that, because I think things are changing pretty dramatically right now.
I agree, and I think it's the whole. I joke. Well, actually, in the tagline, I don't have it pulled up, but you know, of this show, the intent is to make the taboo not taboo to a degree. And I think, to your point, it's like you can't avoid it. Even if you try, you can go in, because Zucks and the crews everywhere, they've got the algorithm dialed in. They know what keeps the scrolls going and the engagement. And then there's that saying that all politics are local, right? Even though we see these circles of people getting into fights over, you know, oil commodities, and they can't even spell commodity, but they're going to be like, well, what do you know about the Houthis? Like, you know, I'm wondering how, like, because you're an extremely well-traveled, educated individual that's successful in a lot of lanes. You've seen a lot. Are you surprised by kind of the chaos that is the marketing aspect of politics today, really from 2015 on?
I totally am. I think I never thought that we could have people in such high political positions saying and doing the things they're doing. We have a lot of foreign kids that play tennis for my husband at SIU. And they visit, and we stay connected online. They're terrified. They're more frightened than we are, because the United States is so important to the world order, the correct world order, and they see us behaving so badly.
Yeah.
So they're very concerned. And, you know, when you have a young 20-year-old person, like, really querying you, like, where is this going? How is this going to affect? It's like, it's not just about the United States, right? It's about the world.
It's
and
a global
world
issue.
order is being completely upended.
Well, case in point, the other day, because obviously soccer is my sport
Right.
passion, and Chelsea is my beloved team. And a couple of days ago, they win the Club World Cup. It was held in it was held in the States. The final was in New York, and President Trump was present for the final. And protocol at these tournaments is there's always the official there that hands the trophy out to the captain, and then they all get out of the way and the team celebrates, and that's where all the pictures are that you see all over the
Right.
news. Well, our guy didn't get out of the way, stood there, continued, and finally the individuals kept trying to like walk him off. And here's where I'm going with this. You talk about that brand identity that is America and what we mean to other people. Because my algorithm is filled with soccer, we were a joke. We were a joke simply because of this trophy presentation.
Right.
And you start to see the true feelings of individuals around the world and how they view us now.
Well, and I've heard that, we're struggling getting World Cup matches, and people are afraid to travel here when there's a World Cup match. I think travel is down. I just came back from Colorado, and travel is down substantially there from the international community.
Yeah.
And, again, all of these little death by 1,000 cuts are going to add up and have a major impact on the country. They're starting to. And I just hope that we can somehow, the pendulum always swings. It's like, how quickly can we swing it back so that we don't do so much damage?
Well, I know this to be true, but I'm going to say it. Just you seem extremely pragmatic. You're a Midwestern woman, right?
Right.
Along the lines of all this, don't you? Because I do. Let me put it through my own words first. I look back at the last 4 years and I look at how these things were handled by the previous administration to the point where, let's be blunt, it was not handled, and it continued to give the Republicans their talking point, that being the border and immigration, et cetera. Now, we know, because for generations, we don't have any reform. We don't have a better system. We don't have more courts and means to process.
But why not? It's been a problem for 25. Problem/opportunity. If St. Louis didn't have immigrants, this is a declining city, probably a declining state.
Yeah.
And without them, we cannot grow. And so there's a group in St. Louis that brought in a bunch of Afghanis after we vacated there. But they're set up to, educate them, get them sort of all housing and schools and get them acclimated to the environment, and it works. But if people are afraid to come here, we're really going to struggle in the city of St. Louis for sure.
Well, I'm sure you probably feel the same thing because you mentioned you have, older children. I have one that's a junior in college now, so I'm looking at him 2, 4, 6 years down the road and attempting to, plan his own routes and do his thing. And when the conversation arises about population decline, and they talk about, well, kids just aren't having kids anymore. I'm thinking to myself, they can't afford it.
They can't afford it. It's so expensive. Even with 2 working people in the family, childcare is so expensive. Medical, it's really difficult.
So, keys to the car, let's just give you a little bit of policy opportunity here. As a potential wannabe grandma, as a parent, as a baller, what would you focus on? Because there's a lot of issues. There's housing. You mentioned healthcare. That's my soft spot. But even the role that AI is playing in job creation, and there's so many things that are on the board.
So we cannot take our hands off the wheel for early childhood education. And I'm fearful that SNAP is going to be cut dramatically. Medicaid, we know, is getting hit. We have a city of haves and have-nots.
Right.
And I keep telling my friends who are the have-nots are coming after us. If we don't figure out a way to make them a stable, section, they need to be educated. And to do so, these kids need to have appropriate nutrition. They need to have, a job path, and that's not a 4-year college. It's a technical school. I mean, there are a lot of jobs in this city and more coming with the NGA that we need a trained workforce.
Yeah.
And we have people here who don't have the ability, to climb up to that rung and get that going. And so without that bridge, I'm just fearful we'll continue to have the decay and the have-nots, and we're never going to get there. So I would love, and St. Louis is a great community in terms of some of the business leaders and philanthropists that want to make this happen. I'm on the St. Louis Community Foundation board, and I mean, every time when I see some of these donations, they're incredibly philanthropic.
Yeah.
But we need a plan. And we need to work that plan for 10 years. We're good at throwing a bunch of money over the fence and saying, oh, here, go build a park in that neighborhood, which has never worked.
No.
So we need and one of the things the foundation's working on is this early childhood, education. Our mass transit is terrible here. People just can't.
We have it?
No. People just can't get to a job.
Right.
Even if they can get it, they can't get there. They might have to take 2 or 3 buses that may or may not be running, and then they change the routes. So it's a city planning thing. And I was hoping when the new mayor was elected that she was reaching out to communities that had gone through this and were doing well, and Indianapolis, Denver, and Nashville maybe. Hopefully that's in the works.
So let's kind of get into the weeds there a little bit, because this is one of the areas that I wanted to touch on. Because when I think about St. Louis in particular, and you think about the business community, the other day there was an article, I think, maybe in the Business Journal, it doesn't matter, local article, where it was talking about the lack of S&P 500 companies, or the declining number of them. But to your point, you kind of alluded to it, when you think of the philanthropic power and the muscle that is within this town, a lot of it is privately held money.
It is.
And when you compare it to other marketplaces, we're near the top.
We are.
So it's one of those things, St. Louis is excellent at self-deprecating. It's, across the board. How do we do a better job of, pointing out to the nation, to the potential transplant businesses, to the potential private equity investors, et cetera, that look, here's some of the strengths here when it comes to the business, because at the end of the day, it's a population issue, it's a jobs issue, it's a wage gap issue, but we need more people here.
We do need our people. And I think bringing those businesses here is something, you have several groups working on that, but they want a trained workforce. So these businesses will look at us because we're the center of the country. The cost of living is good. We have good schools. We've got a lot going for us. Mm-hmm. And I think we're hard on ourselves all the time. The first thing we bring up is crime. And that's being worked on. It continues to be worked on. But I think showing them, and some of these trade schools that are starting to come about, that we do have a trained workforce and we can train them quickly, based on what's needed. We're struggling, though. When you have states like Texas that don't have state tax, or Florida, they can pretty quickly pull away and make a case for some of these businesses and take it away from us.
Okay, so the Texas thing is always intriguing to me, because, it's the no state income tax.
Right.
And it is also extremely light on just general business regulation, which now we're starting to see chinks in that armor.
Well, they don't want regulation. Their legislature meets every other year. If you can imagine a state the size of Texas, and they only meet every other year, it's like, we don't need no stinking laws. We don't want the government to tell us what to do.
Yeah. Well, let me just get your opinion on this, because this has been the joust or the battle on social media between Newsom and, and him defending California and just Texas in general. I'll give him credit. I think he's smart going on all these bro podcasts, et cetera. Just the other day, he was on one in which the individual joked like, "Hey, glad you came here to Texas to hang out with 92,000 of your expats." And in his reply to his defense, he's like, there was post-COVID, it was tough. We did lose a lot of people. He goes, but He goes, let's talk about production. We give the federal government $81 billion a year in taxes,
and
they
Texas collects $71 billion.
Yes. When you hear those things through the lens of what Missouri, forget about what it's trying to do. It's not doing anything right now. But when you hear those arguments, like, where do you see Missouri fitting in all this? Because a lot of the MoLeg, the Freedom Caucus guys are all like, oh, taxation is theft, and they want to get rid of every single tax we have. Is that a path forward in your view? Because you've got a front row view within a burgeoning industry, a newer industry. You're trying to figure out how to generate, growth and mass and interest. And you also have a vested interest in Missouri gaining population. Where do you see the tax strategy coming into play, or is it a non sequitur?
It takes money to run a city, right? So if it's not coming from the taxes or state taxes, it's got to come from somewhere else. Is that real estate taxes? Is it a value add tax that you put on anything someone buys? I know this year they were talking about trying to roll back tax on capital gains in the state of Missouri, which, yay for me, that would help me. But where are you going to come up with $450 million to replace that?
Right.
So the city cannot have, or the state cannot have less money. We need it to grow. I haven't seen the plans as to what would replace, reducing or taking those taxes away.
Yeah.
So there's got to be strategy to it. Like, a lot of what's happening in Washington, there's no obvious strategy, and that's the scary part.
So let's apply that, to our own backyard here, the strategy and or lack thereof, because this is the knock on a lot of the business orgs. For me personally, in some of the circles that I run in, they all feel the same way. When you look at the Development Corp, you look at even Greater St. Louis Inc., et cetera, it feels as if we continue to take these kind of, here's our top 5 ideas, and we are going to rotate them based on, temperature.
Right.
And we've been doing this for 20 plus years, kind of the same people, same ideas.
The problem is the city-county divide. We have 91 municipalities. Mm-hmm. That's not money well spent. People can't get on the same page. It's too frustrating for any elected official to fight that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how close we are to, that's what happened to Denver. Until Denver became one municipality and they could speak in one voice, they didn't grow. They muddled just like we did.
Denver, Indy, Nashville.
Right.
All within the last 15, 20 years.
Right. And look what's happened.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, just be the first to be second. Steal their idea.
Do you think if Baltimore does it, then
Maybe,
we'll do it?
Maybe.
One of the last two. Yeah, because it's like, I get the value in a bike path, but it's not going to.
Right.
Some kid on the coast isn't going to be like, oh my God, I want to start my career.
Right.
They have a bike.
And people that are already here are like, that's nice, thanks, but it's not attracting businesses and.
Yeah.
More people to work here. So.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, whenever I was at SIUE in the economics department, we were tasked with a study. Basically, long story short, we were comparing and contrasting the Dome and the Rams and the new track 2B over in Granite City. And basically, they asked us 4 major races a year versus 12 football games a year. And the economic impact to the region, the racetrack blew it away. And the reason was 88% of NFL ticket purchasers live within your MSA anyway.
Oh, right.
So you're just shifting the dollar around.
Staying at hotels
whereas over 60%
Right.
of NASCAR
That's
fans travel an average of 300 miles to events.
Yeah. I think they say that NASCAR event, just that one event, is a $60 million impact. And that's Illinois and Missouri, right? The hotels and the food.
Yeah, I would absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
And I think through those examples as to, okay, what are we selling, here in St. Louis in particular, but really the region broader, because we also get in debates often. I want to get your take on this. When you hear St. Louis is affordable, or the dirty word, we're cheap. As a marketing pro, do you like that angle?
Well, I think affordable housing is music to a lot of young people's ears. I mean, my kids both live in Denver, and what they had to pay for homes was 3x what you could get in the St. Louis or Illinois area around here. And that has a real impact every day on how much you have to put on your house payment, right?
Right.
So, somebody maybe who's working from home, and a lot of young people do that now, may have the ability to look around and say, I can't afford Denver. In fact, one of my friends just left and came back here because without roommates, he could not afford to stay there.
Yeah.
So I think affordability is not the same as cheap.
Yeah.
And quality of life, good neighborhoods. Our zoo is first class. Our airport is getting improved. It has to. But there's just so much culture in St. Louis that people don't ever really talk about, to promote the city. And it's here naturally because we
Yeah.
have so many immigrant groups.
Yeah, we one of the areas that we like to talk about a lot on B-side is the culture aspect of it. Because the Muni is getting a ton of love nationally right now. It just won the Tony for venue. There was a big article saying Muni, where Broadway takes its
That's
summer
great.
vacation or whatever. And then as you well know, obviously our food scene here is
Right.
second to none.
Right.
Music venues, we sell more concert tickets than Cook County.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Because
true.
we have so many locations.
We have a loyal, mobile, concert-going public.
Yeah, that's great.
And to the point there, you're not a cheap region. We're affordable. And what comes along with that affordability or describes or defines it really is the housing stock. We got great housing stock.
Right.
Now, mind you, we do have the Central Corridor in particular, in which you're still looking at $350 square foot properties. But the frontier land
Right.
isn't that far, and it's
Right.
not that
right.
dangerous.
I mean, St. Charles is growing like crazy.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you said St. Charles. We just kind of touched on St. Louis has a lot of speed bumps to overcome. We've got the city-county issue. But now we have another kind of tug of war between St. Louis County and St. Charles County. And St. Charles County has been rapidly growing. They are starting to see population issues, not from a gross number. They're not getting any kids. Those 18 and under, that number has been declining year over year for the past 4 years there. You know the area better than most. Talk about the relationship or your own vision of who leads this thing and what's St. Charles's role in the growth of our region.
So several of my partners are from St. Charles. I call them the St. Charles Mafia because I didn't know much about it, growing up in Illinois and then just working kind of in the downtown and Clayton areas. St. Charles felt so far away to me.
Yeah.
And it's not. But they see no sense in leaving St. Charles. I mean, to them, crossing the river is unnecessary. And now a lot of businesses are popping up out there. Amazon's got a big, place. Boeing's got a big place. And the building just keeps going west. So it's kind of like Chesterfield. Like Chesterfield doesn't want to come east of 270 ever. They got everything. So my fear is that this whole region, to me, is the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
And they don't feel the same way. They feel disconnected and successful on their own. And why do we want to go down there and get our hands dirty in that mess?
I'm with you because I have plenty of friends that are out there too. And, their defense is, I see it as pretty paper thin because it's like without AB, without the Cardinals, without City,
Right.
Without the zoo, Forest Park,
Right.
without all of these things.
This is the front door.
Yeah.
It's the front door to our state right here.
Yeah.
Right? And that riverfront needs to be improved. What city has a great river that the riverfront isn't the most, fun place to live?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. What an opportunity.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like I think we have an identity crisis, in real time, and it's being exacerbated by the population flight,
Right.
And frankly, broader national trends to the point where it's affordability and people just don't know what to do.
Right.
Let's talk for a second then about brand. If because you travel a lot still. When you're out and about for all these years, how do you describe St. Louis? Maybe not in the past, but maybe the present. Like, what is the brand identity if you had to sell it? Where would you start?
I really talk about culture. Like, I am a big fan of different kinds of cultures working and living together. And, to me, it just brings the spice to a city. So when I think about Dallas, which has this reputation, to me, that is just so white bread, big blonde sticky hair, big cars. Like, I have this image, and it may be completely wrong, but that's kind of my image. St. Louis, I don't know how other people see it, but to me, St. Louis is grittier. We have people who work extremely hard here who may have come from other countries, the Bosnians that we have, the Afghanis that we have. I just feel like that makes a city have so much richer art and food and relationships if people are willing to embrace it.
Yeah.
And it's more interesting.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with you, and I think coming full circle a little bit, and then we'll take a quick break. We were talking about your LinkedIn engagement earlier, and kind of the political support, the passive political support. What you're describing right now is kind of those two things overlap, because you do like Jim Hacking is one. Jim, the immigration attorney.
Yeah.
He's a friend. When he tells his stories of what he's going through to help these individuals legally, bring that spice.
Yeah.
Not necessarily all over the country.
Right.
Jim's national. It feels short-sighted for this administration, and really for those that are like really on board with that's what I voted for. Like, they're forgetting that when they come to St. Louis, when they're not afraid of going downtown and they go to the Hill, well, the Hill doesn't exist without
the Italians, right?
So I think
they show it off, right?
Yeah.
They're quick to show it off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, they love.
I mean, look what Ben Paremba has brought to the city in terms of food, and his influences from several countries. He's the best restaurateur around.
Do you think we in the powers that be, in the tourism orgs and et cetera, speaking about a Ben, talking about the Hill, talking about Bevo, all these things. There's this underbelly, we call it the B side, which is kind of that gritty, cool side, right? Do you think we're doing a good enough job of really promoting and marketing the things that move needles? Or do you feel, because I feel, I'm projecting the answer here, that the arch and toasted ravs and kind of this, look, I love John Goodman, but I like fat John Goodman.
I do too.
I
do too.
And Sterling K. Brown, cool name and all,
Yeah.
but he's not been here for a long time.
It is amazing the people that have come from St. Louis, like Joe down in the Loop, Joe Edwards. He started that whole Stars, on Del Mar, and then that 501c3 published a book about all the stars and the people. Well, I've not walked it and seen them all, but I read the book. I was blown away at the important people that have come from St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to get them to stand up for us or to come back unless you hire them to do a commercial. But there's, again, just so much history and unique information, and I do not think we lead with that. I remember when Ben went down to the Tower Grove area, and he transformed, a several block area. And when he first moved in there, the people all were like mean to him. They didn't want him around. They tried to get him out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind that he got that kind of reception.
Yeah, we are NIMBYs. Well, I know it happened. Somebody went and said, "Where'd you go to high school?" And he looked at them like they were foolish, and it was all downhill from there.
Right.
No, that was McCrae down there, Tower Grove Avenue, Olio. was
Oleo,
kind of the first one.
Alea, Oleo,
Yeah.
A&O Provisions, Nixta,
Yeah.
what he brought to that neighborhood, was pretty incredible. And now it's all on Del Mar.
Last question before we take a quick break. Along the lines of the food, I got to ask, your go-to, your desert island, your last meal, along the lines of what we're talking about, what's your hideaway that is your desert island meal provider?
What am I going to eat?
Well, yeah, you get one meal from a St. Louis institution.
Oh, I think it would have to be Esca.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's his best place yet.
I love it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking all things beer, weed, and more. I mean, I told you this was going to be a fun one.
Beer and weed, wow. What a
I know.
fun
I
day.
mean, hey, only two Granite Cityans could pull this off. All right, we'll be right back. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. I wanted to give you an update on a new podcast called The B-Side STL. This is a show dedicated to the underbelly of St. Louis, specifically all those things, places, eats, drinks, and activities that typically don't show up on the most recent tourism flyer, but that ultimately defines the neighborhoods we all love and live in. So be sure to subscribe to this pod and catch all the new episodes of B-Side STL. Now, back to the show. Yeah, he brought in the toy, and he's like, "This one's for you." I'm like, I got thick skin. I'll put it on the table.
No, wait, do you have Drewby in there? Do you know the Drewby?
No, that's that's ATAR. That is ATAR FC is a soccer club over in Belleville. It's like a semi-pro team.
Oh.
And Mill Pond Brewing over in Belleville, they're all the sponsor. John Birdsong Skip is his name from Granite City.
Yeah.
Not is the superintendent of Althoff.
Oh, wow.
So they play over there, and they brought that in. So every now and then, people know like a few little tchotchkes.
Tchotchkes.
So we're back. I wanted to maybe go back in time a little bit and peel a little bit of that brain power, your experiences going back to the marketing world. Put a little pin in the map for the listener, brief resume, because you got into the agency world, kind of early in your career, and you had pocket aces because you landed on working with beer. Give us a little bit of a roadmap through your AB intro and some of the early projects, if you don't mind.
So like you, my background is financial. I had an accounting degree with a master's in finance. Did work for an accounting firm, did tax work. A couple of years into that, I'm like, well, this isn't going to be fun for life.
No.
So I ended up going to work for the 7-Up company that was based in Clayton at the time. And there was an accounting position, but I told the guy when I interviewed, I said, I'd really like to get in the marketing department. And he said, you'll have great exposure to marketing. And within 10 months, I had landed like an assistant product director job. So a couple of years of that, I get a phone call from a headhunter. AB's looking for someone to help introduce a light beer. And I only got the interview because my name was Mitch, and they thought I was going to be a guy. And so once I got in and did the interview, they really liked my financial background because the budgets were so big, and the boss had a guy that ran him over budget the year before. And so he was like, yeah, you can protect my backside. So I really started learning marketing on the job, right? And I took to it.
So you kind of casually threw that out there, a light beer, which turned out to be
Bud Light.
The Bud Light.
The Bud Light.
Not light. Can I have a light, sir? Remember, that was the...
The only thing that got us out of the tailspin we were in was our funny campaign to combat Miller Lite.
Yeah.
But, everybody thought when we rolled that beer out, it was going to be immediately successful because it had Budweiser name on it.
Yeah.
And it was not. It took us 3 times of reintroducing the product, modifying our advertising, coming up with a dog named Spuds McKenzie. And finally it took off. And at one point it was the biggest selling beer in the world.
So you kind of alluded to the name faux pas, right? And I wanted to ask you about that because, here's what I would like to do. I want to slingshot back and forth between today and then, just to kind of get that reflection. You were going into beer. You're coming from finance. You are a woman, but you go into the beer world, which is masculine and strong, and the Bush guys.
Right.
And at the time, was that a battle that you wanted, that you were seeking out? Did you have something to prove, or did you just really like marketing and beer, and you were more reacting to the impending sexism that was about to come down the pipe?
I was pretty oblivious to that. I had two brothers. My dad and grandfather were very influential in my life, so I always was kind of raised like one of the guys. So I didn't pay attention to it. And the thought was, I can be tasting soft drinks our day, or I can be taste testing beer. And at the time, I'm like 22 years old.
Beer's cooler.
So it was less cerebral than what you just described. When I got there, I sort of ran into that buzzsaw. And to me, I realized I was working harder to get people to respect me. I didn't really know what a wall there really was until I got there. And I'm not a quitter. My boss loved me. My direct boss loved me. And he just kept pushing and promoting and helping and trying to shield me from that stuff. He would tell me sometimes some of the things that the senior management would say, and I'm like, you are kidding me, right? And he's like, no, just ignore it. Just ignore it.
Now, this is back in the day when they would smoke in the offices still, too.
Yeah, and we had refrigerators full of beer, and we worked, 6 full days a week. And, I was married and had my first child while I was there. And it was funny because, I don't know if I can say this on a podcast, but I had my son, and in the hospital, my boss called me and told me that I was being promoted to a director of the whole new products area, non-beer new products, which was wine cooler, soft drinks, waters. And he said, can you be in a meeting with August? And it was like 10 days later. So I'm like, I don't know. I've never had a kid before. Sure, I'll try it. So I go.
Yeah.
And I'm breastfeeding, and I don't realize that you've only got a couple of hours, right, before you just start dripping all over the place. So the end of the meeting, August turns around, he looks at me, and he said, Mike, come to my office. We're going to have lunch. And I yell in front of all these men, I am someone's lunch. I'm going home.
Oh, my God. I love
And
it.
I thought my boss was going to faint.
But knowing what I know and the people that know you as well that I've spoke, that's on brand for you.
That's right. That's right.
Were you ever cognizant of maybe kind of that, that a little crass, a little piss and vinegar? Did you kind of make that into part of your own brand, or was it just kind of a byproduct?
I didn't realize it. It kind of was hardwired in me, I guess, as a kid. And I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be smart about the business. I wanted to learn. I tell everyone, they said, what kind of a boss was August the 3rd? I tell everyone that he gave me my sense of urgency in business. He taught me, that you don't just wait and have a meeting and, kick the can down the road. You do something. Yeah. And I appreciate that. What was he, a ball buster? Absolutely. Did he yell at me at times? Absolutely. But it just gave me the courage and the confidence to just have the right answer, right?
Yeah.
Do your homework, have the right answer. And I think that when I did leave AB, that I disappointed a lot of women. I got calls from them after I left, and they said, how can you leave us? You were blazing a trail here.
You were their North Star.
And I'm like, I didn't think I was doing that, right? Yeah. I was not cognizant that they were following and drafting behind me.
Knowing this in hindsight, do you ever wonder, what if? Would you,
You know what? I do it now. Now I'm cognizant that you got to help lift people up, right? Because they're just kind of invisible. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was just young and dumb, and I ended up leaving to go start that marketing agency because it sounded really fun, right?
So how did you react to or manage? Because you talked about you get shit done, right? Touch it once, all these cliches in the business world about being efficient and effective quickly, but marketing is a different kind of a beast because Now I tend to operate in the creative space where it's like, if it's fun, do it, throw it out there. If people like it, great. If they don't, whatever. But you were kind of in that weird middle earth where it was critical to have the creatives constantly bringing ideas. And how did you balance the need to, quote, get shit done and react to things that are not working? Because in the marketing, they're paying for it, right? And when these ideas miss, that's red.
Well, and especially at a company like Anheuser-Busch, when you put a Budweiser name, that's the baby Jesus, right?
Right.
They tried to make light beers go away. They never thought there was going to be a market, so they would put Anheuser-Busch. I think they used Anheuser-Busch Light. They used a couple of different brand names, and it really didn't stick. But then they saw that the category is growing. Now, back in Middle Earth days, we had to do a lot of research. You know, there would be things that the agency would bring that they thought were good. I would react as a young, beer drinking person, but then my management was in the 50, 60, 70-year-old range. And so the translation from what does a young beer drinker, what's going to motivate them, and then how to sell that through to all those different age groups, that was the difficult part, more so than coming up with the right idea. When I came up with Bud Light and we presented it, the VP, who was probably mid-60s at the time, said, "We will never do a dog. Anheuser-Busch will never do a dog." And again, young and dumb.
Wait, why did they say that though? Was it just kind
He
of
just
like
felt
they were above it?
He felt it was too lowbrow.
Okay.
We have Clydesdales. We don't have dogs. That would be something Stroh's would do, right?
Yeah.
Stroh's ultimately did coffee.
Yeah.
But 8 months later, I ignored him and did it anyway.
Meisterbrow had the German Shepherd. No, well, it's funny too because you fast forward to today. Maybe realistically within the last 10 years. I mean, the puppy and the Clydesdale.
The best.
Like my kids' generation. Who I know you're not drinking Keller. I didn't see that fake ID. They know that.
Right.
Matching it up.
Right.
Some of the campaigns, take Spuds, you had the frogs, you had, so many.
That opened the door for all of that, though, right?
Do you think they work today? Like if you were to take today's environment, because the thing that, my little notes here, and PETA, right? All of a sudden, if you were to roll out Spud McKinsey's Day, where the dog's at a party and everybody's having fun, somebody's going to say that's animal abuse. There's just such crazy ideology.
Right.
Do you think like if the business had just shifted forward, 30, 40 years to where you overlap with the mindsets of today, what works, what doesn't work out of those early campaigns?
So here's what's different, and that is social media and everybody having a voice on it. So back in the day, people were definitely against Spuds. They thought it was appealing to children. And in fact, that's what killed it. Strom Thurmond standing on the floor of the Senate, shaking one of my stuffed Spuds dogs, saying how we were trying to get underage kids to drink. But today, if you run something like that and it catches fire on social media, it can make a campaign so quickly. Whereas back in my day, it was network television and print and outdoor and all these slower building mediums and a huge investment that may or may not work.
Right.
Whereas today, you're going to know quickly if it works or doesn't and with what demographic it's working.
Why do you think, if, in the 90s in particular, why do you think if you look at the two major vices, right, that were in the crosshair, that being tobacco and alcohol, you had Mothers Against Drunk Driving really coming after AB in particular across the country. On the other side of the spectrum, you had just families of individuals with heart problem and everything, lung cancers, et cetera, and Winston and how nicotine's not addictive, right? There was a major court case in which Philip Morris they got hit.
Right.
It was the first major mega billion-dollar settlement, right? And I always found it interesting how, and in not understanding why it never happened, alcohol, beer in particular, just while it was in the crosshair, it never took a hit. It almost seemed to just continue to grow and expand in popularity. And to your point, like the marketing campaigns were more, the entertainment became household culture.
Right. Right.
Did you ever try to maybe tiptoe into a campaign, seeing what was going on in the cigarette world? Maybe you didn't want to push that battle too far to where now Congress is coming after you, or was it just like, hell, screw it, let's have fun?
You know what? When at AB, when that was all going on, I was there. We were under serious consent decrees, and we had to make sure that our commercials, like we couldn't just run on late night if it had a younger population. Because they were very concerned about people under 21 seeing these spots and being attracted to them. I do think that we were really good stewards, and we were very careful, and we worked with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We were a big funder of them. Now, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking, does that even still exist? I don't ever see that anymore, and that fear and loathing. We were also able to point to the spirits business. Right. And people always thought that was stronger, alcohol worse, and beer was kind of a lighter version.
Jack Daniels.
Yes.
Their campaigns.
Well, they didn't advertise for years. Now when I see a TV spot, I'm like, wow, it's almost like, where you been for 30 years?
Yeah. Talk a little bit about maybe today, the role of, speaking in marketing terms or really brand identity terms, influencers. How would you envisioned utilizing influencers to try and break a Bud Light? Because you were really creating a brand, right? Whereas today, just a stupid 8-second video can all of a sudden turn into 50 million views.
Right.
And what is that earned media value? Can you imagine? Have you thought about what kind of a tool the ability to test influencers in markets would have been?
Well, there's a real life example with Bud Light. When I think about back in the 80s and early 90s, we pushed everything on the consumer, right? Mm-hmm. If you saw it on TV, or if you saw a print ad or a billboard, or you experienced something in a bar, we were pushing the message. And that interaction between consumers wasn't happening as much. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about what happened with Dylan Mulvaney, she was an influencer in the trans, gay, lesbian, and that was used, very specifically, but that whole thing just blew up in their face. And I can't tell you the phone calls I got from people, like distributors all over the country, saying, can you help? And honestly, Bud Light in the beginning, we always supported, gay pride, and because we were a new brand and looking for different things to hang on to. Right. Spuds was a female. It was not a male party animal. It was a female.
Hold on. You just ruined a whole lot of people's childhood there, especially in today's world.
Right. I said it's been in our DNA. But that just shows you the power of social media, how quickly that happened, how devastating it was to the brand. They're really still just digging out.
Were you surprised by the impact on it? And two parts of this question. Were you surprised by the volume of reply to the Dylan scenario? Well, let me just stop there.
I was shocked. I thought that it would stop and blow over. And I told people, I said, don't give this any oxygen. Yeah. Just let it go away. The problem is Kid Rock jumped on it, who brought another whole demographic. And then everybody started jumping on making fun. And most people thought, because the social media was so loud, that AB had produced a can with her name on it and put it in retail. And the truth is, they made one can and sent it to her for her birthday. And she posted about it, which was, as an influencer, what you're supposed to do. So it's ruined her life. It's ruined the Bud Light brand. And the thing that angered me was, I don't care what Kid Rock thinks about this. He's the one that really put gas on the fire.
Yeah. Well, for his own brand.
Yeah, it got him popular again. Nobody was talking about him until then.
Well, here's the other side of the equation, because I kind of nerd out over the market, and and I was really kind of super interested in what was going to happen with the stock, given the news and everything else. And listening to some calls and reading some articles surrounding it. What nobody really ever talked about, especially when the stock started to tank, was the parallel universe to the Dylan issue was people aren't drinking as much.
Right.
Specifically that 21 to 35-year-old market that used to be, that's your 3 a.m. drinkers, right?
Right.
That is dissipating at a rapid clip.
It is.
When you think about your old stomping grounds, that being beer, how would you react to, or how would you kind of maybe describe the issue that the industry has today with this shift in just taste, and frankly, the cultural reality of, kids aren't drinking.
Right.
Do you look at that? Do you whiteboard? Do you still put your agency hat on? Like, I can fix this. Here's what you should do.
No, I do not. I'm not going to volunteer for that. But I'm still connected. A lot of my friends are still in the business. I talked to my old boss yesterday, and he was telling us one of our other friends that lives in California said if he didn't have bottled waters and energy drinks and Mexican sodas to sell, his business would just tank. And he's got all the AB products and other imports and things. And honestly, I don't think they saw it coming. I don't know that they have a plan. They're all just trying to grab there's this plastic ready-to-drink thing. It's called Beat Ball or something.
Oh, I've
looks
seen that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It looks like something a kid would buy.
Yeah.
And I was in a liquor store in Colorado, and I said, do you sell any of those things? He said, we sell a ton. And so, it's kind of like when people used to drink spirits, and then they gave up spirits for beer. And then, the kids started drinking better, and they started drinking spirits again. And now they're not drinking alcohol because they don't like the effect on their health. They don't like that liver damage long term, which is not bad.
Isn't it bookends too? Because you do have this younger generation that is so much more health conscious. They're going to the gym more. They're all playing frisbee, golf, and stuff. They're much more active as a group.
And they have other things that make them feel good that don't leave them with a hangover the next day.
Which we're going to talk about that stuff in just a second here. But the other end of the spectrum, I would say, from me up, it's a whole other issue. Why am I drinking less? I don't like to be so bloated. I get a little tired. The pounds aren't going away. The calories tougher. Right. And oh, by the way,
I don't sleep as well.
And so
that's called maturity, JB.
It's called the beginning of the end. A little bit of a gummy and a Blanco, whatever, because we just got back from Mexico, and I would always order tequila and soda, and they'd be like, what kind of tequila? I'm like, white.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's me too.
I don't care.
Some ranch water.
Yeah, exactly. So you have that. So I think I'm viewing this all as, if you look at the 3 demos, young kids aren't drinking because it's just not part of their culture right now. Gen X and above is not drinking because everybody's aging, and it's becoming similarly a health issue. And then you have this middle generation that is under the financial constraints of the world we live in now, and they're all in the middle of raising their kids. And so the time available to have that session or go to a happy hour, like if I'm in liquor, where do you go? Like, if you had to choose either an experience or a market or a target, we're just hypothetically speaking here, what would you try?
So I have good friends in Colorado, in Carbondale, Colorado, where we have a house, and they have a distillery, and they have absolutely beautiful brands and sustainable. They reclaim all the water. They buy the grain from the rancher. They bring it down. They take the spent grain to the cows. I mean, there's not a better marketing story than Marble Distillery, but people just aren't drinking.
Yeah.
And so the woman who's the distiller has been making shrubs, which goes back to the late 1800s. Monks used to have a lot of fruit trees, and there was no way to store and keep their fruit when it was really ripe. So they would put it with vinegar to hold it, to preserve it. And that was called a shrub.
Okay.
And so Europe has used these for years. They use them like as a cocktail base, and you add some club soda and vodka or whatever. And she said, so she is making fruit shrubs and selling them in her bar where she's got beautiful whiskey, bourbon, vodka, gingercello. People want the non-alcohol shrubs. And so, you know, it's like you just have to be able to pivot to stay alive. You don't know if this will ultimately come back. There's way too many brands out there. They're all struggling. The distributors are struggling.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, people are looking at mocktails and then they're like, you might put tequila in yours and I might not.
Yeah.
But we could still go out and, you know, have a night out and enjoy ourselves.
It's that hand, smokers talk about this all the time. It's
That's
the
right.
finger fetish.
Yeah, and yeah.
You know, when you're out, you want something in your hand.
That's right.
Yeah, because the other kitschy keyword or catchphrase is experiential, right?
Right.
Everybody's talking about whatever your product is, it
Right.
better be experiential.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, it's liquor. You know, it's about volume.
Well, and that's why, you know, you're starting to see these cannabis beverages come online because
Yes.
people still want to be at the party.
Yeah.
And they want to have, you know, they're not going to smoke a joint. They want something to drink.
Yeah.
And so if you can have a little bit of THC in it, give that mood altering effect without the liver damage and, you know, the waking up in the middle of the night and hungover, it's kind of like the next best thing.
So let's talk about the next best thing because you made that transition. You're on top of the world selling the world's #1 beer. At some point, you hit the pause button, you exit stage left, and you walk on stage right into the world of cannabis. How
How's that
who called?
happen?
Yeah, who's like, hey, beer lady, come sell weed.
Nobody. It was self-inflicted. I wasn't a cannabis user as a young person. So, you know, to me, it was always just say no to drugs. Alcohol was my drug of choice.
Yeah.
I was trained professionally to drink beer.
That's what the lobbyists were for.
Yeah, you're right. So my kids went to school in Boulder, Colorado. And while I was there trying to visit them and hang around with them, Colorado had approved medical cannabis. And I'm a lifelong learner. I see a new industry popping up in front of my eyes. It's like, wow, when do you ever get to do something like that? And so I would knock on doors out there, growers, manufacturers, retailers, and it was medical. So you actually needed a med card to get in.
So, okay, that's really intriguing to me because what does that even look like where this middle-aged white woman from the Midwest is knocking on my cannabis farm door?
That's what I would say, middle-aged housewife.
Like what was that intro or what was the cold call?
I was honest. I would just say, hi, I'm Mitch from the Midwest. We don't have this. I'm fascinated by what you guys are doing. And what I learned was it's an incredible community. It was very difficult to bring cannabis back into a legal state. You know, started in California 25 years ago, and it started very medically. You know, it was
Right.
nurses trying to help people with AIDS. And so the people who have kept it alive for all that time, I have so much respect for. And yes, they're illegal black market growers, but without them, we stand on their shoulders, right? They truly believed and saw that it had medical benefits for people. Somebody put that plant here for a reason. And we messed it up by making it totally illegal, and then everybody had to go underground and try to, you know, hybridize strains and get the THC higher. But the original plants that existed around the world all have different makeups, different terpenes, different THC, CBD. There's 100 cannabinoids, and we only know about 4 of them.
Yeah.
Well, what do the other 96 do for us medically, right?
Right.
I treat epilepsy patients. To see little kids go from having 50 seizures to none from a simple preparation by that plant, it's like, okay, something there. I want to know what that is. I want to learn about it. These people were kind enough to let me in. I mean, they would show me their books. Like, they just wanted people to understand the plant, the benefit, you know, how they were helping patients. And so I came home and continued to research, and Illinois was we had a bill going through the legislature for medical licenses.
Right.
And so I thought, I'm a resident. I'm going to apply for this. And I should have just stayed retired. I was just so interested in the space.
Yeah.
And I got really indignant about why it had been made illegal. So I just kind of went for it and ended up getting my first dispensary up in the Chicago area. And then Missouri opened up the CBD license. I got that, and then just kept going.
So, you're how many years in? Are
12.
12 years in. Talk about the life cycle in 12 short years, because those early dispensaries, yes, it was legal within said markets, but there was a tremendous amount of federal, pushback and
Right.
just bad mojo.
Right. Well, and it's become legal state by state.
Right.
And so whenever I would fill out an application for a license, I had to sign an attestation that said I realize I could be arrested at any time because I'm trafficking in a federally illegal drug. And that gives you pause, and
Yeah.
it's like, fortunately, Missouri was a 33rd state. But back in California in the early days, the feds would just come in and raid just when they felt like it. And they may have had no reason to do it if they had a license per the state, but they would come in and cut down plants and just take off, and that would, then they wouldn't do anything else. But that was the end of it. They maybe destroyed $1 million worth of a crop. And what happened as more states started legalizing, we had something called the Cole Memo, which was, I guess he was the Attorney General at the time. He wrote a letter that said, if you're operating in a state that has a legal program and you are compliant under that state law, the federal government cannot come in. They're defunded, basically, to come in and bust your operation. So that held until Trump was in office the first time and brought in, who was his attorney general, the Southern guy, there for 10 minutes that got kicked out.
Oh, my God. Well, didn't everybody get kicked out in 10 minutes?
Well,
wasn't it Scaramucci?
No,
Is that
no. He was
I
that
know.
Southern guy. Anyway.
No, the time frame was called you were in one Scaramucci or
The
two
mooch?
The mooch. Yeah, right, exactly.
But anyway, he tore up the Cole Memo. And that day, literally, I was operating in Illinois. Our bank called and said, we can't bank you anymore, because they had board members that got scared, because the feds were tearing up the Cole Memo. So, we continue to struggle just with federal legalization. We thought before the Biden administration was out last year that they were going to reschedule it. So cannabis is Schedule 1, which is the strongest. Basically it says there's no medical efficacy, it's addicting, it's all the things that it isn't. And there's been a move to reschedule to Schedule 3. And if they would do that, it's not, we're still sort of a scheduled drug, but the whole system, calms down, and banks can come forward, and insurance companies, and it's easier to do business. Very difficult for us to do business as a normal business entity.
So let me ask you a question, because I want to get your take on its more macro impact, and where I'm going with this is I think about alcohol, liquor industry, beer in particular. Number one, it was legal, but it created jobs, but its socioeconomic impact was you created entertainment districts, and you create this vibe, and it's all accepted, and everybody kind of looks past the drunk driving stuff, and and it became this behemoth that was kind of equal parts economic gorilla, and it's it's where everybody gathers, and this is what you do, and there wasn't a sport that didn't have beer
As
kind
a
of
sponsor, right?
buoying it. Weed, cannabis in particular, it hasn't had that moment yet. It exists.
Right.
It is a revenue generator within the markets and the industry, the locales in which are producing and selling, et cetera. But it hasn't had kind of that cultural synergy occur. How do you view that?
That's the regulatory. I mean, it's federally illegal. So the day it isn't, it's completely
But are you
accepted.
Are you envisioning though, like as soon as let's say they do it within a matter of time, are we looking at bars where it's now smoke time? Are you looking at places that are built around, because there's a term, sports bar, that you're going there and you're going to drink a shot and a beer and watch the game. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's going to be the same thing?
Absolutely.
Just weed
It's
form?
coming. It's coming. I mean, sports sponsorships, we're starting to talk to the Blues. Major League Baseball, they don't even test for it anymore. So many professional athletes use it for recovery instead of opioids and tramadol and things that they prescribe. It's much safer, much better. It makes them better humans and better family members. So it's taken 20 years for people to have the confidence to say that out loud, but it's happening and people are realizing it. So you're going to see, if the federal government would just say it's no longer federally illegal, everybody's coming after that dollar, right? Because they know it's an industry that's growing and making money that can support them. Mm-hmm. We delivered $240 million in tax revenue to the state of Missouri last year, and it's only growing. We delivered $60 million to the Veterans Administration, which is real dollars. The employment, we were 1 in 10 new jobs in terms of employment. We're over 100,000 people that work in the industry.
In state of Missouri?
Yes.
Wow.
And countrywide, it's huge. So we do a lot of education to break down the stigma. And what you have are pockets, like people in their 60s and 70s used to smoke weed when they were young, right? And then
behind the garage.
Right. And
Right.
It was terrible stuff, who knows where it came from. But they remember it fondly.
Yeah.
And so now when we talk to them, they're not interested in smoking anymore, but they sure want to know, what do you have that'll help me sleep? Mm-hmm. What do you have for this fibromyalgia and my arthritic hands?
Yep.
People are playing pickleball like crazy. They're getting hurt, looking for that kind of stuff they don't want to take pharmaceuticals, right? Yeah. So that's a whole market. Then you have young people that are using it socially instead of alcohol, that, like all the forms.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time and the normalization of it. I speak all the time. Like, I got called by the St. Louis Garden Club. And those people are in their 60s to 80s.
Right.
Very, very upper end Clayton, West County group. Mm-hmm. And so we're at the Ladue Racket Club, and it was a snowy, terrible night, and I thought, nobody's showing up. She said, this is the biggest crowd we've ever had attend. And I'm like, cannabis brings them out. They want to hear about this.
So back in the day, beer during the 80s and 90s in particular, if you envision the pyramid of market, at the tip of it would be, it's your laborers, it's your working force, it's that middle class white guy that's going, to have beers with his buddy after work, right? It was very stereotypical, and I would have to assume the numbers probably prove that out. When you think about the pyramid of market, right, who's at the tip on the cannabis side? Who do you think, will lead the charge in volume and utilization? Is it the younger generation that is anti-liquor? Is it the older generation that is anti-opioids? Is it, because anecdotally in my world, I think it's going to be soccer moms sitting around that just are watching the calories.
Gummies.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're sharing gummies in the parking lot at pickup.
Right.
It's interesting because it's all of that. But, Missouri's fairly nascent. We're 4 years into this, 2 years with medical and then 2 years with adult use. But your frequent user are younger people, right? So they're the ones coming in wanting a pre-roll. They got $28 in their pocket.
Yeah.
But the older person spends more money. When they come in, they spend more money, because I might be buying for my mother who's 93 and can't sleep or has dementia and is showing anxiety.
Or is on chemo
Is
and
on-
needs,
right,
you know,
right, needs
addition.
something for nausea and things like that. So, as operators, we have to look at that segmentation and say, okay, we have a smart brand that young people like, and they're watching our emails and website, and whenever we do a new strain drop, it's like, get out of the way. They're busted in the doors. There's another segment that just kind of uses it. I've been amazed at the people that have come out of the woodworks to me telling me they're cannabis users. I never would have expected it. But then that older customer who, all of us have sleep issues, all of us have pain and anxiety, right? So now there's getting to be really almost pharmaceutical products that are created. There's a whole line of gut stuff
Yeah.
that's here now for people who have Crohn's. I've given it to a friend that had her mother and husband have it in Granite. She said within hours it stopped their pain. And
That's
so
crazy.
now it's like, so to them that's medicine, right? So that's a monthly thing. So it's up to us to really educate customers who don't think of cannabis as a solution.
Is that a scary lift, as you sit back and you look at it? Because, the thing about alcohol is alcohol is alcohol is alcohol, right?
Right.
I'm going to have red wine because I'm eating meat,
Right, right.
but the physical effect, the
Right.
difference between that and a shot of whiskey and, 6 beers, it's still just alcohol with different
Right.
variations, right? Weed, though, to your point, it can affect a million different things,
Yes.
truly from a health perspective. And I think about how hard it is just to get a bartender that can get an order right.
Right, right.
That's beer.
This is a huge issue because, first of all, there's so much we still don't know about the plant that we're anxious to know. We've been learning about new cannabinoids like CBG and CBN, which are non-psychoactive. You don't get that head effect from it, but CBN helps you sleep. So who doesn't want that, right?
Right.
So it's up to the growers, the operators, the research people, wherever you can find them. The country of Israel is 25 years ahead of us in testing and researching cannabis. So the terpenes in the plant, the different cannabinoid combinations, and people are now starting to make enough money in the industry that they can afford to work on that testing. I mean, I did just a small test with SLU it was a mouse model test with dementia, and it was CBD only. And we got really good results with these mice living longer, looking healthier, running more actively. And then when they ultimately died, we were able to examine their brains and see that there were much less plaque in their brains. So I want to repeat that with THC in it because a THC CBD combo in Israel, they tell us, is having major impacts on
Elevates.
autism, dementia, because it's neurological. Cannabis really helps neurologically, and it really tamps down inflammation in the body and the brain.
It just feels as if it all comes back to, again, politics and stigma.
That's
and,
all it is.
Because if that goes away and it is
That's right. That's all it is.
not illegal.
Well, and the cities I'd have to go to get a city permit or go to a zoning meeting. I remember sitting in Chicago in the chief of police office and telling him that I was applying for a dispensary there, and if he was going to oppose me, I needed to know it. And big old jarhead guy, and I'm sitting there with my little sales spiel.
Yeah.
And halfway through, he reaches across the table and grabs my hands, and he says, "Mitch," he said, "I don't have any problem with cannabis." He said, "I got so many other bigger issues." He said, "My mom has breast cancer. My other brother's not a cop, so he gets her cannabis that we make her brownies so she can get through her chemo."
Right.
And I'm like, "Chief, I'll be glad when next year you can buy it in our dispensary and there's no pesticides, it's tested, the strength of it every time." So everybody has been touched in this country. Every politician, even though they won't vote for it, they all know someone in their family that's using it medically or even just socially.
Yeah.
So it's like, can't we all just be honest and drop the,
Right.
the
I'm with you. Let me ask you the hardest hitting question of the day, and then we'll get you back to your real world life here. AB, Bud Light in particular, had Spuds. Insurance, I don't remember the name of the company. They've got Limu, the Emu. Who's Suede? Who's Weed? What's going to be the pet of choice that moves the weed needle when it's all?
Oh my!
Are we some slinky snake? Is it a gorilla?
I can't believe I haven't thought about this.
I mean, that should be like top of the list.
Yeah,
there.
I'm surprised that somebody hasn't put a gun to my head and said, "What is it?"
Yeah, what's your spud for the weed world?
Again, it goes back to such a varied target audience, right? Yeah. Social media is really important in cannabis, and I know you're aware of Reddit.
Yeah.
So Reddit is like good news, bad news every day, but people who are really engaged in it have a point of view. They want to hear what somebody else on Reddit has to say. Mm-hmm. They can go negative quick, or for them to give positive reviews is like, oh my gosh. So we are so nascent in this industry. We're just trying to figure out which strains and what do people really like. And I don't think one character would endear anyone to my brand long term, because I have to produce something that interests them, makes them feel good. And if you think about it, everybody's needs something different in that regard.
Might I suggest a parakeet for the retiree pickleball crew?
Do you happen to have one I could use?
I'll find one. We can make that work. What's the bird that talks like a toucan or something? That would be good too. It's talking back.
That's
Mitch,
funny.
thank you very much for joining.
That was fun.
This has been a lot of fun. Best of luck. Obviously, we'll stay close and kind of keep tabs on what's going on.
It's going to keep changing. So.
Well, go follow her on LinkedIn. She get those little quips out every now and then.
She's spicy.
Little spice, East Sider. We're all a little spicy. Tell me you're joking. We'll catch you next time. Like, review, follow, share. Links to Mitch's businesses, etc., will be in the show notes. And thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you. It's very fun.
Bye-bye.